Welcome back. In the previous video, we discussed the different data collection methods and the various tools you can use to collect data. When conducting a survey, a questionnaire is one of the commonly used tools in collecting data. Just to mention briefly, a survey refers to the method of securing information concerning a particular research question from all or a selected number of respondents of the concerned population. The commonly used tool for a survey is a questionnaire. A questionnaire is a data collection instrument consistent of a series of questions and other prompts for the purposes of gathering information from respondents. This method is quite popular, particularly in the case of big inquiries. A questionnaire consists of a number of questions printed or typed in a definite order on a form or a set of forms. Questionnaires allow collection of both subjective and objective data in a large sample of the study population in order to obtain results that are statistically significant and also to have a qualitative explanation of the data. After this video, you will be able to construct a good questionnaire. Questionnaires are practical in the sense that large amounts of information can be collected from a large number of people in a short period of time and in a relatively cost-effective way. Secondly, they can be administered by you as the researcher or a number of research assistants with limited effect to its validity and reliability. Questionnaires can also be analyzed more scientifically and objectively than other forms of research. Thirdly, when carrying out quantitative analysis, the results of the questionnaires can usually be easily quantified by either a researcher or through the use of software packages such as SPSS or Stata. When it comes to changes of emotions, behavior, or feelings, questionnaires, however, may be inadequate to understand this kind of information since it is difficult to tell how truthful a respondent is. In other cases, the respondent may not be thinking within the full context of the situation. There is a high chance that people may read differently into each question and therefore reply based on their own interpretation. For example, a question may be framed as, "Do you always participate in stakeholder meetings?" Always, in this case, is relative, and the question is better framed as, "How many times in the month do you participate in stakeholder meetings?" Successful administration of questionnaires requires that the questionnaire be comparatively short and simple. The questions should generally proceed in a logical sequence, moving from easy to more difficult questions. The decision to include personal questions at the beginning or at the end is based on your discretion as the researcher. However, several studies have shown that people who provide personal information at the start of the survey are more inclined to complete it. You should try as much as possible to avoid the use of technical terms and vague expressions which can potentially be interpreted in different ways. When formulating questions in a questionnaire, you should pay attention to the measurement level, particularly when you intend to quantitatively analyze your responses. In this week's introduction video, we discussed the different measurement levels as well as the measurement values. Now, the questions may be dichotomous, meaning they could simply be yes or no responses, or they could be multiple choice where a number of alternative answers are listed. The responses can have categorical values with the use of a Likert scale or continuous values such as information and income, age or weight, and so on. Another important point to consider is that indicators are considered the smallest or micro unit that you can use to get measurements for a variable. Usually, the variable is comprised of various indicators which need to be combined together. These indicators should be measured at the same level to allow for computation of a variable. Let me explain further. Suppose you want to measure place attachment of individuals in a particular neighborhood. You could have responses such as, "The place feels like home," There are many things that keep me in this place, and there is no place I would rather be. All these three indicators refer to place attachment as a variable and would be combined together. Sometimes these indicators could be on a Likert scale, and it would be best to measure each of the different indicators on the same scale or assign the same options for each of the indicators. Usually, when formulating questions, there are broadly two forms of questions: closed-ended questions and open-ended questions. A combination of the two in one question would be partially closed-ended question. So, let us look into the advantages and disadvantages of the different forms separately. First, open-ended questions require the respondent to answer in his or her own words. This means that they generally provide complete freedom to the respondent to write the most appropriate answer in his or her opinion. These types of questions are well suited for exploratory research questions. However, they are more difficult to code than closed-ended questions. Now, closed-ended questions are classified in a way that asks the respondents to choose from a list of responses. These type of questions are easy and quick to fill in. They minimize discrimination against the less literate, and most importantly, they are easy to code, record, and analyze quantitatively. A mixture of both closed-ended and open-ended questions is usually referred to as partially closed-ended question. In these types of questions, the most probable choices are listed by the researcher, and choices such as other are also included to allow the respondent to enter responses that are not listed by the researcher and to give more elaborate explanations. This type of questions are ideal when you are unsure about the exhaustiveness of the options or when you want to acquire some additional information from the respondent. Partially closed-ended questions should not be used as escape routes for poorly crafted questionnaires, and other options should not be appended to every closed-ended question. They should be included only when you can identify the most likely responses but need to measure the diversity that exists beyond those choices. Bear in mind that most people may not take the time to write in their choices if they do not appear on the list provided. Now, the wording of the questions have a greater effect on questions that aim to find out opinions, perceptions, or attitudes. You should understand the type of information required for any type of question. The number of questions to be asked to measure each variable is also an important component of the questionnaire design, as the number of questions or indicators affects the reliability. As far as possible, the number of questions has to be kept at the minimum necessary so that the respondents would not be burdened. Substantial differences in responses can take place due to minor variations in the wording of a question. Hence, extreme care should be taken in framing questions. Questions must be worded in such a manner that every respondent completing the questionnaire understands what is being asked. Questions that combine two or more questions into one should be avoided, as they would confuse both the respondent and you as the researcher. For example, a question that asks, "What is your opinion about the quality of food in the cafeteria and why?" should be broken down into two questions. One that asks about the opinion, and a separate question that asks for a further explanation. Lengthy questions and questions that are complex and difficult to understand should also be avoided as much as possible. Avoiding ambiguous words and wording the questions precisely are necessary. As a researcher, you should be sensitive to questions that arouse strong emotions, generate resistance, or result in a refusal to answer. Leading questions that direct or influence the respondent toward one point of view should not be asked so that it will not result in non-response error or bias. Relating every question to the study objectives is necessary to ensure that each important question is asked, and if any question is not absolutely needed or is inappropriate, it should be left out. Now, you have a general understanding of how to construct a good questionnaire. We shall look at the important factors to consider when administering a questionnaire in the next video.